Welcome to this demonstration of continuous integration for Fusion middleware. Let's start by populating our Maven repository using the Oracle Maven Synchronization plugin. This is included in the Oracle Home in this location and can be installed using the standard Maven install file goal, specifying the jar file and the POM file. Once the plugin is installed in your Maven repository, you can use it to populate your repository with all of the other Oracle provided artifacts in your Oracle Home. This is done by simply running the Maven Sync plugins push goal and specifying the location of the Oracle Home. Now it's populated our Maven repository with all of the Oracle artifacts. So let's go ahead and create a new SOA application using the Maven Archetype. We can do this using the standard Maven Archetype generate goal and specifying the coordinates for the SOA application archetype. Maven will prompt us for the details of our project, and it's now created a new SOA application for us. This is exactly the same set of files that you would get if you were to go into JDeveloper and create a new SOA application. Now let's use JDeveloper's Maven import wizard to edit our application in JDeveloper. We select the file import and Maven project. We tell JDeveloper where to find our project, and we can select the project and import it into JDeveloper. If you set the location the same as the current one, it will just add the JWS and JPR files to the existing project. And here we see our project in JDeveloper ready for us to implement some components. Here we see the POM file. So let's go ahead now and deploy our composite using the SOA Maven plugin. Again, here's the POM file. We need to tell Maven where the server is located and the username and password to use to contact the server. And now we can go ahead and use the standard Maven pre-integration test goal, which will compile our project. So run it through the SCA compiler, which performs validation. You can see it doing that now. It'll create the SAR file for us. It will deploy it to the server. You can see that it's doing that right now. And there we go. So let's take a look on Enterprise Manager and we'll see our new composite here on the server. Now that composite was fairly boring, so let's go ahead and actually add something into it. So for a start, let's add a BPEL process, and we'll call it a simple adding process. And we'll edit the schema to set the input and output for the process. So just to keep this simple, we'll make a simple process that takes two integers as input, and it will add them together and return the result in the output. So we have two integers here called A and B as our input. And let's update our output to also be an integer. Okay. So now let's implement the logic in our process. We can use an assign activity we're using a fairly simple process here because we really are interested in the Maven workings rather than BPEL. So let's go ahead and just add those two numbers together and assign that to the output. Okay, save our process. Now let's go back to Maven, and again we'll run the pre-integration test goal. So again, Maven is going to compile our project, package it into a SCA, and deploy it to the BPEL server instance for us. So let's take a look at that again in Enterprise Manager. Here's our process. We can use the built-in test client to run it and check that it behaves the way we expect. So let's provide two numbers here to add together, 1 and 2. Let's start the process, and we can take a look now at the process execution. And we can take a look at the payload that was returned, and we can see here that the result includes the number 3, which is 1 plus 2. So let's add now some automated SCA tests and run them as part of our build. So we're going to create a new test suite, and we'll create a new test in that test suite. We're going to test our simple adding process. We can generate the input payload here, generate the output. You notice we have 1, 2, and 3 again. Okay, so we save that, and let's go ahead. Before we run that, we also need to do a little bit of work on our POM. So firstly, we need to tell Maven where to find the JDeveloper properties file that is required by SCA Test, whether you're running it through Maven or Ant or any other way. And let's go ahead and create that JDeveloper properties file. And we just need to tell it where our server is located and the username and password. Okay, now we can go ahead and run the Maven verify goal. So this will go one step further. After the deployment, it'll actually run the tests as well. So as we watch here, it's going through doing the compile. Now it's building the SAR, deploying it to the BPEL server, and now it is executing the SCA tests on the server. And in a few moments we'll see the results displayed here. Again, you can see it got the result 3, so the test was successful. Now let's go ahead and add our project into a version control system and set up a Hudson job to automatically build it every time we make a change. So let's go ahead here and create a Git repository. I'm going to synchronize it to a remote GitLab server. So first of all, we need to add all of our files into the project, and then we do a commit, and finally we push them to the remote repository. Okay, here's the GitLab server. We can take a look here and see there's the push that we just did. And here are all of our files sitting here in the Git repository. So let's go over to Hudson and create a new job, and we'll just call this SOA app 1. Okay, we're going to tell it to find the source code in Git, and there's the URL for the repository that we want to use. We'll tell it to poll the Git repository every 5 minutes. And now we need to tell it what to actually do. So we're going to invoke Maven, and we're going to run let's run pre-integration test. Okay, we can save our job, and let's just go ahead and run that now. And we can take a look at the output as the job is executing. And you can see much the same as we saw earlier. It's checking out the code from Git. Now it's starting up Maven. And we see it compiling the composite. And then it will create the SAR file and deploy that to our test server. And it's done. Now let's look at adding some human tasks to our project and using MDS as part of our build. So when we use MDS, we need to tell JDeveloper where to find the MDS repository to use during the build. So that can be a file-based repository or a database-backed repository. So in this example, we're using a file-based repository. We also need to set the app home parameter to tell it where to find the ADF config file. And in the ADF config file, we need to tell it which MDS to use. Actually, let's go ahead and set up a database one. So to do that, we need to give it a database server and the username, password, and so on to connect to that. Okay. So let's go ahead and add our human task to our project. Again, we're just going to use a fairly simple human task, just to really what we're interested in here is seeing how the Maven build automation works, not how to build human tasks and projects and so on. So in our process now, we will add in a human task. It's over here. Yep, there we go. Yep. So we add that in, and we'll tell it to use our newly created human task. Okay. And in the human task, let's set up a participant to route the task to. Let's give it a task title. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the Maven pre-integration test. goal again. And so again, you see it's going to go through and compile the composite. Now you notice this time there's a few coherence messages coming out here. Looks a little different, as it's actually going ahead and contacting that database backed MDS that we configured to find the XSDs and so on that are needed to actually perform the validation of the human task. That's done, created the SAR file, and again deploying it to our server. So again, let's pop over to the server and take a quick look. So let's go and find our composite. And now we can see that it has a BPEL process and a human task. So now let's create a user interface for that human task and include that in our build as well. So again, we're just going to keep it simple and use the auto-generated task form. So we'll go ahead and create one called HT1 user interface, and we'll just wait a few moments while JDeveloper generates all of the files for us. Okay, and we can save all of that. And let's jump back out to the command line and run Maven again. And you see it's going through much the same process. Compiling the composite. Deploying the composite. Now it is working on the human task user interface. So you can see it is now invoking OJ deploy to create the WAR files and package them into the E file. And that'll just take a few moments. Okay, so it's created the EAR file, and now you can see it deploying that EAR file to our SOA server. And that's done. So that gives you a bit of an introduction to using Maven to build, compile, package, deploy SOA applications.